And we're here with some Anatomy of StarCraft, which, if you don't know, is a really cool series where I take my paleontological and comparative anatomy expertise and we look at Zerg models, and we have several spin-offs as well and things like that. And I'm here with EG.iNcontroL, hence we're on his stream. He's gracious enough to come on the show and even host it on his stream, right after his leg nerf happened. So yeah, hopefully the nerf gets reverted. We're also here with our social media wench, Fonzie.
Hey.
Everyone gets to be a wench. And we've got a sort of amateur caster that's up and coming. His name is Boisterous. He works with me on a few projects as well. So he's here with us as well.
Hello, everybody.
He's got a very nice casting voice. And I'm going to start off by saying that I had a very interesting encounter in my new apartment. I just moved, just got my tortoise in. He's now free range again, cruising around the floor and all that. I had my cat out walking him in the apartment, and this gorgeous girl just emerges and starts talking to me. And it turns out she lives, just on the floor above me, and she lives with her girlfriend. So that really cool moment when you realize there's an attractive lesbian couple living just above you.
Oh. I was really hoping it was going to have something to do with ants.
No.
Sure, we can work it in there.
Yeah, we're going to, because the topic today is the Queen. And for those who don't know, I do harp on ants a lot because I love them, and they're a really good proxy for a superorganism like what we see with the Zerg. I'm totally prepared today. I just had an energy drink and all that. For those of you who don't know, energy drinks are frickin' amazing when you're trying to do research and study. They got me through university, that and beer, so.
Yeah, you're not alone on that, I don't
think. No.
So they've got really good nerd potential. So anyway, I think we're just going to talk about the Wings of Liberty / Heart of the Swarm Queen today, because the Brood War Queen is kind of a different monster altogether. But we'll probably mention it a little bit. So we're going to start off, I guess we can start off, how we usually do, from head to tail. We can start off by talking about what the hell is going on with the Queen's head. Any opening observations?
It's really weirdly shaped. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It probably has a rather large brain, though.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Although that could be, the way I was thinking of it, you've got these overlapping plates that kind of work like Roman armor, gives you a lot of coverage, but it also is quite mobile. And those plates are actually, they've got the typical Zerg spikes on them that don't seem terribly useful. But what I've noticed is the Queen doesn't actually have a mouth.
No.
If you look at the unit portrait, and I think one of our lore nerds was telling me just before this, his name is Kelthar, that apparently they use Protoss DNA to make this, and Kerrigan's DNA. So that kind of makes sense why they would have that sort of pseudo-Protoss-y looking face. What I kind of interpreted that sort of cask coming off the back of her head, that how you said she might have a big brain.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of thinking maybe that is actually where she makes a lot of pheromones or hormones or whatever. Because I think we can all agree she doesn't inject the larva, but she does something to stimulate the growth of extra larvae, and I think that would probably be a chemical response.
That would make sense.
Yeah. So then again, it could also be the launcher mechanism for the what are they? What the hell are their attack called? The acid spine?
Acid spines.
Yeah. So I think that it might just be a launching mechanism, though. How the hell would they launch them? There's no opening, right? As far as
yeah, I'm looking at pictures. I can't really tell, because in the game it looks like she fires from the head, but the plates they don't really face the right direction for that.
No, they really don't. And she's got these two little beady eyes, and she does have the famed and much hated Hydralisk Dirkjaw, some rather extensive caniniform teeth, which caniniform just means canine-like looking tooth, so it's all spiky and pointy and whatnot. So the head itself kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe they'll fix that for Heart of the Swarm, because is she not getting a new unit model?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think they're just adding in the Broodmother unit model as a secondary thing for the campaign.
Oh God, yes, we're gonna have a lot of those secondary campaign garbage things. Um,
At what point do you? I mean, to me, honestly, the Queen doesn't look like they were aiming for anything anatomically correct at all. Felt like they were more going for just stylistic. They like that big head model idea. Comes from the new Ultralisk. I mean, in Brood War, the Ultralisk had this tiny little nubbin of a head. There was no gigantic head at all. And then in StarCraft 2, they're like, let's blow that head up. Let's make it the whole fucking body, you know. And it's like now it's gigantic. So it's not like it's evolutionary. It's not like the Ultras was like, well, I find it better when my head's the size of my body. You know, it didn't go that way.
Well, they kind of got repurposed as well to be that living tank to take a lot of punishment. So it makes sense that they would have a giant cephalic shield. Think about something.
Repurposed? What do you mean? What do you think they were in Brood War?
I don't know. I wasn't the Brood War pro man.
They were exactly the same thing, my friend.
Were they really? Okay, well maybe they just got evolved into. I mean, it makes sense for them to have that cephalic shield, right? To take, like we saw in the Heart of the Swarm trailer that was just released. They take that. They kind of shrug off that tank shot. So I think that kind of makes sense. But for the Queen, like, it makes more sense than the Queen itself. And I think you're right. They kind of did go for this sort of fantastical looking thing. She's got like two little arms with spindly little pointy fingers, and she's got those two weird like pelvic claws coming out of the front of her body. So, I mean, I kind of get why she has the big sort of wing-like claws. That I kind of get that because she does use them, right? She attacks rather awkwardly with them when you get too close.
Yeah.
So sort of pre-Queen nerf, and then they put it back in for Heart of the Swarm, I believe. I haven't played too much of Heart of the Swarm.
You mean pre-Queen buff?
Pre-Queen buff. Yeah, that buff that everyone cries about, except for Zerg. I still think it was a cool buff. Shut up. Screw you, Darren.
Well, it's so far in the past, it's not even worth complaining about at this point. I mean, the Queen buff was like literally 6 months ago or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. I don't play at a high enough level, obviously, to worry about things like that. So one thing I've noticed with the Queen sort of ecology going on, Queens are kind of limited in their roles as far as early and mid game. They, of course, sit by the hatchery, and they do provide some local defense, but they don't really venture very often off the creep. So you've got sort of one set of Queens pushing the creep, using their celebrated anus at the back there that they just poop out the tumor, and they've even got these like weird little graspers going on, coming off their bum there. So they kind of have that split role where they're pushing the creep, but they're also tending nests and stuff like that. And I think that's a pretty neat. The pretty neat thing is that they can't move very fast off of creep, and this would be sort of a necessity to keep them from wandering. If you look at ant colonies in particular, you do see oftentimes the Queen is pretty limited in mobility, and in fact, if you were to say stick a shovel into an ant colony, they would actually evacuate. They would help her evacuate with a escort and like carry her and stuff like that. So they're kind of made so that they don't really they don't need to go very far, and they certainly obviously don't go very far. But the difference is between the Queen in the Zerg and the Queens that we see in all of the sort of hymenopterans, which are bees, wasps, ants. The Queen in the Zerg has a limited or somewhat leadership role, where she's giving some orders or something. I know that she gets delegated to or something like that, whereas the Queen in an ant colony is basically a baby maker. She's basically like I don't know, what's that 20 Kids and Counting show? She's that she's that lady. She's just squeezing them out. Well, she's not really the one squeezing them out. She's stimulating the squeeze, if you will. So she's almost like the male. I don't know. That show's really messed up, and I've never seen more than 5 seconds of it. I just know they've got like 1,000 kids. So yeah, and so I find that's kind of a cool design thing anyway, that they can't really venture too far from their specific role. I know that was obviously necessary for balance, because Queens showing up at your front door doing a shitload of transfuses, that's pretty much a bad time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they do sort of pop up in Nidusworm play. Do they still pop up in Nidusworm play?
Oh yeah, they pop up, you throw down some creep tumors, and then it's just a real pain.
Okay, what's the standard metagame now for number of queens to get if you're just a standard Zerg? I don't
For
remember.
matchups, I mean, usually it's like 4 or 5.
And so that's one for every probably 3 hatcheries and then 2 pushing the creep?
Yeah, that's pretty popular. Like Nest T, and what was the other guy last night? They were doing the 6 queen play for the most part.
Okay. So that kind of shows that, I mean, queens have such cool utility in the game, and even in late game when they transfer into this role where, and in particular with Broodlord armies, you see, I don't know how common it is in Heart of the Swarm or anything like that, but I know with a lot of Broodlord matches, you end up with like 7 or 8 queens just like spamming transfuse.
Yeah.
And that's quite difficult to deal with. I've even seen it on mono battles, actually. It's pretty ridiculous having a swarm of queens. So, and to me, they seem like they're rather heavily armored.
Mhm.
Although, except their abdomen, which is sort of the back part that's above those 6 sort of almost webbed legs that are connected by that weird webbing, that does not look too armored. But I think the front of her has got a lot of that. I believe it's called lucida segmentata, which is if you ever watch, like, say, go watch Gladiator, the shoulders that the Romans have at the start, where they've got that layered armor, is actually quite fantastic, and that's what we're seeing here. So we see a lot of this sort of military-minded, guided evolution, and she certainly is no exception to that.
Yeah, no, they look really cool, and they can be pretty tough to kill early on.
Yeah. What's the deal with those tendrils that are coming off the back? What the hell's going on with those?
They remind me a lot of like talking about the ones coming on like draping down the back from the back of the head.
Yeah.
They remind me a lot of Kerrigan's dreads, honestly.
The difference is the unit animation. They kind of wave almost. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they wiggle around. So I don't know if they're the same thing, or if there's certainly some concept art where it's like, yeah, there is a little bit of that going on with the.
Well, they might be like the Protoss nerve things that they had, where it connects them to the psionic network that they use as a race. That might be how they connect to the Overlords and Kerrigan and the whole swarm in general.
I see. So those things that you mean they kind of ripped off Predator and put on the back of Protoss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that like just the entire model of the Queen kind of shows and highlights what Blizzard has hinted at as far as their creation. Because if we look at the web feet, it looks kind of obviously like the Queens from Brood War, whereas you have the front of the body, which is reminiscent of a Protoss, and then also the 2 side wings, and then the hair that looks very much like Kerrigan. So I think that kind of goes towards them being a combination of those 3 things.
Yeah, let's talk about the Queen from Brood War a little bit. What were her spells again? There was that sort of
I just had that open.
Ensnare,
the green spooge.
Parasite,
Yeah.
which killed a biological unit, could not kill a mechanical unit. And that was it. Oh no, there was also
Spawn Broodlings.
Spawn Broodlings. They're their best
Spawn
spell.
Broodlings. Yeah, I got them mixed up. I called Parasite Spawn Broodlings.
I think I used to use Spawn Broodling to kill siege tanks.
Yeah, when I say mechanical, I mean like it couldn't kill a Reaver, Archons, which I guess not mechanical but psionic.
Yeah.
And then I think everything else. I mean everything Zerg, everything Terran on the ground, and just those 2. I guess it couldn't kill.
Yeah.
And you could kill like zealots and stuff too, I believe.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting role because I remember they were pretty quick, weren't they?
Yeah, they flew too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they flew and they came from, what was it, a Queen's Nest?
Yeah, it was a Queen's Nest, and they also had actually the kind of funny thing, the consistency that is random from Blizzard is that in Brood War, the Queen's bottom half looked very similar to the bottom half of the Queen in StarCraft 2 in the sense that it had that like webbed finger/claw like appendages.
Yeah.
But of course it looked more like a bat with like 4. I don't know. It looked more like a bat as opposed to a Queen, which has like the bottom half that's like that, but then the top half is almost humanoid/Protoss, I guess.
Yeah, and I believe they actually did incorporate, like, they did explicitly say that they've incorporated that different DNA and stuff like that. One thing that I'm trying to find a picture of a Queen from Brood War. Like, as far as I know, she had tusks, didn't she?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, she had
I
tusks.
think her eyes were on stalks too, if I remember correctly, like two eyes on stalks that were black.
Yeah, so they like
It was a really dumb looking unit.
Yeah, it was quite derpy for sure, and like the head was rather small. She had like that sort of a lot of things in Brood War, I guess, had really like little pinheads. Like, and then they just kind of decided, nope, we're gonna make everything freaking giant. Which I guess, I mean, if you're looking at the utility of shooting acid spines as well as being sort of a factory for producing various pheromones and stuff like that, it does make some sense that they would have maybe like some organs in the back of that, and like I don't think it would all be brain in the Wings of Liberty one, because they don't strike me as terribly intelligent. Probably smarter than a Zergling, but probably not as smart as a Kerrigan.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes without saying. So, I mean,
the lore of Zerg is very little brain. It was mostly that when you kill the Cerebrate in Brood War, the Zerg units actually went wild and started killing even their own stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that most of the units wouldn't actually have much in the way of a brain. They have more of just like whatever makes their motor functions happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of them is actually controlled. It used to be by the Overmind, but then it became Kerrigan when the Overmind died.
Yeah,
And then Cerebrates are like local commanders, basically.
It seems to me a lot like queens, or at least the brood queens that are going to be in the campaign, has essentially replaced the Cerebrates as the main commanders underneath Kerrigan.
They actually basically do, from a lore standpoint, the brood mothers, which is what they're called, the big commanders, are basically just queens that have had their mental limiting abilities taken off them, so they can actually communicate with the swarm and control a vast swarm. And they were created right before Kerrigan was de-infested. At the end of the Wings of Liberty campaign, to kind of be her Cerebrates, because the Cerebrates were still too loyal to the Overmind, and if they were let loose, they would have just created another Overmind.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanted to comment very quickly because I know, Jeff, you really like it when I talk about ants.
Yeah. I actually do, though.
You're like the only person that doesn't give me shit for it. I always get ripped on by people talking about ants. But anyway, there was that comment about how when you kill the Cerebrates and Overmind, the Zerg all flip out and start killing themselves and stuff like that. Well, basically, you can kind of see a similar functionality in ant colonies. Ants have something called an altruistic gene, which actually codes for them to sacrifice themselves for the betterment of the colony, so kill themselves or put themselves in direct danger so that the colony can be successful. And it's one of the only true cases of altruism, even in nature. That includes people. We're not fully altruistic at all. We're probably quite the opposite, in fact. But anyway, what happens if about, say, 12 to 15%, depending on the species, of a colony doesn't have this altruistic gene, and you just have a bunch of lazy, slacking ants, like they're just leeches? Basically, the functional workers that do have the altruistic gene will turn on the colony, go and kill the queen, and like flip out and kill each other.
What? Which one will do that?
Pretty much.
Not the lazy ants, or
the like healthy worker ants.
They do that because there's a too high population of the lazy ants?
Yeah. Yeah, they go right after the queen too. They do not fuck around. And I think there are, in some species, when there's not a queen producing certain pheromones, you actually can have workers sort of jump into the role of being a queen, and they kind of fight it out from there and things like that. So it's, just again, another one of these interesting parallels where, you have to have certain checks and balances in both the swarm and ants. Otherwise, they flip out and lose their shit.
It's kind of like a genetic safety mechanism so that the population of ants that are ineffective doesn't get too high, so it just evaporates the entire population.
Yeah, well, imagine if you had a queen producing, say, 25%.
Oh, it was a bad queen.
Yeah, a bad queen. It's her genetics that are causing the issues, right? So that's why they kill the queen, so that the genetics don't carry forward, and so she doesn't produce more queens that are producing lazy ants, and that's actually bad for the species. So they do checks and balances, and I think that might be one of the roles of the queen as well in StarCraft, is that she is kind of managing. She's got this energy to manage, right? So she's managing transfusions. So like an Ultralisk coming back, she's got to balance transfusions, injects, which of course we all know you can't. There's almost no circumstances in which it's a good case to miss an inject. So she's got to constantly manage that, and she's got to manage creep tumors as well, which is why they actually have sort of delegated queens. So they kind of, make queens with extra queens for that role specifically. And those are usually the ones doing the transfusions as well. So it kind of makes an interesting management perspective, and you actually do see this in some ant colonies, new fledgling hives, as well as there's some species that do have multiple queens, but what ends up happening is they'll have, like, say, a couple queens, and they start spamming eggs and stuff like that, and then the queens will turn on each other, and only the strongest queen will carry forward as the actual queen.
Like the actual physical queens will turn on each other?
Yeah, they'll flip out and they'll try to kill each other.
Is there, like, my understanding of most ant queens is they have a gigantic abdomen. They can't actually move around very well, right?
Some of them can, yeah. I mean, if you look at the honeypot ants from, I believe, in Arizona, they've got a humongous ass as well. They look like a baneling just filled with sugary fluid. And you actually have that in marauder ants too. You've got a certain whole caste that just has this derpy abdomen, and they don't do a whole lot of moving. Some queens are rather mobile, especially when they're young. Queens like fly around and stuff like that. But when they get more mature, yeah, certainly they have these. They're quite large, and they're quite. Some queens can run around, like the marauder ant queen has really long legs, and she's really good. Like when they decide to move their nest, which seems kind of random, they do it at random. Basically, she's quite mobile and just runs with a heavy escort. Whereas there's some queens that they literally just, like, when a queen gets too old, say the workers might just cast her out into the pile of dead ants. And the queen just, like, flails waiting to die. Like, she's just like, you have reached your useful limitation, And that's kind of like, you can imagine a queen with full energy versus a queen with no energy. Which one are you more likely going to want to sacrifice?
Right.
So it makes a lot of sense from a queen's perspective. If they are at all selfish, no matter what their role, they're going to want to be pooling as much energy as they can. But at the same time, they don't want to pool energy because they want to have that sort of inject larva and stuff like that. So it creates a really interesting, dichotomy from a queen's perspective, right? As you do your job, your usefulness becomes less, in a way. So it's, I don't know. Just think about that next time you're doing your injects and stuff like that. I know you don't play Zerg at all, Jeff, but I'm sure you poke around when you're screwing around in the game or whatever. But just think about it that way, right? I mean, obviously, if there was an upgrade to give queens more energy, that would be probably overpowered.
Oh my god.
A little bit.
I think it would be a perfect answer to Marines. To be honest, I hate Marines. Don't even get me started. So
Just where I put on All I Do Is Stim by Tempo.
Oh god, don't even. Okay, I'm seeing a lot on the stream. Okay, who am I? Okay, I am a paleontologist. I majored in basically paleontology and comparative anatomy, but I did a lot of entomology as well. So, yeah. Yes, really, Lupa SC2. Basically, when I have a contract, I make $100 an hour to fly around in a helicopter with a good friend of mine and screw around in the backbush. So it's a pretty cool deal. So I'm trying to share my knowledge with you.
You'll want to come up with a better description for your job with that one, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been
fly around and screw around in the backbush. That could be taken any number of ways.
Oh God. Yeah, so it's. I mean, we're an all-inclusive group. So what that means is we're community inclusive. So anyone who wants to volunteer, you're absolutely welcome to. Blah blah blah. And we can kind of go from there. We'll provide contact links and stuff later on in the episode or anything like that. But one thing I want to point out: do you guys see those beady little eyes the queen has?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Little tiny things that would be absolutely obstructed by those giant jaw things hanging off of her head. I mean, that to me reeks of almost good and bad design on the part of Blizzard. on one hand, you've got this thing shooting a projectile. And so it's going to need to have that depth perception and some pretty decent eyes to it. So that's obviously not what we're seeing. However, for something that you're expecting isn't going to be doing a lot of moving, isn't going to be actively seeking out combat, and isn't going to be, you're trying to discourage this thing from wandering, which suggests to me that the queen does have more free will. It's just that they limit her in other ways. So those eyes, if you've got really shitty vision, you move really really slowly off the creep. You've got this big head hanging off of you. You've got these cumbersome derp jaws hanging off your face. You've got really fragile arms. There's many reasons why you actually don't want to. Somebody's trolling me here. There's many reasons why, as a queen, you don't want to venture off of the creep, even though you are built kind of tanky. Actually, they can take a few hits.
I have some thoughts actually as to all these spikes, and this wouldn't just apply to the queen either. Like, you'll notice from Brood War to Wings of Liberty, a lot of Zerg units got a lot more spiky. I think this is an intentional thing by the Zerg. It's an intimidation factor. The queen is meant to look intimidating. It's supposed to scare anyone who would happen to actually come across it. Considering that someone who was once human is now in charge of the swarm, she would totally understand the concept of human fear and as to what would actually scare people. So, it seems to me that would be why.
Here's the thing, okay? How tall is a Marine in his suit?
I think
like 8 feet or something.
Yeah,
I think it's 8 feet.
And so, in comparison, when you stand a queen next to a Marine, I'd be shitting my pants if I was standing next to one of these things. So I don't really know if it's necessary to have all these extra spikes and stuff. Yeah, sure, they could be vestigial, but in the case of the queen, we know where the queen comes from. It comes from the queen in Brood War. They didn't have any of those spikes and bulges and stuff like that in Brood War. We know that they incorporated Protoss DNA. Protoss doesn't really have a whole bunch of spikes coming off of their face. We also know that they incorporated some Kerrigan DNA. She also lacks a lot of spikes coming off of her face. So the question is, since they're guiding the evolution of this thing, it is artificial selection in no uncertain terms. Why would they select for the spikes? Because these are pretty substantial spikes. These aren't just like random growths. They're pretty substantial.
If you think about how she shoots, she shoots spines a lot like the Hydralisks do, and Hydralisks have those exact same derp jaws. So that could just be, they could have mixed in some Hydralisk DNA to give her the ability to shoot like that, and the spikes are just a side effect from the whole deal.
Yeah, maybe. That's actually a good point.
That's the closest we'll get, I think, to an answer.
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes, other than saying, LOL, it's a video game, you guys are nerds.
Which is always the answer, it's just that we work around that.
Yeah, we try our best to resolve it. Yeah.
Well, I gotta do my Q&A with Raid Call real quick, but before I go, I wanted to give you guys a chance to, because there's some of these people are interested, just so you could tell them where they can find out more about you guys and stuff.
Okay, yeah, so we have a YouTube channel, and there it is, posted in the chat. We have a Facebook, and we have a Twitter, and I'll leave Fonzie the Bronzy to post those for you guys. And then Boisterous, this guy with the really awesome voice, he is an amateur caster who's actually pretty damn good. He casts all leagues, and you can find his YouTube channel. He'll put it up in the Twitch chat here. And basically, yeah, that's where we're at with this stuff. So going forward, we're going to try to expand. We've got more series coming up. We've got a Lore of SC2 series coming up. An English major is doing that. We've got Mechanics of StarCraft run by a guy. He does the physics side of things with the Protoss. We've got a brand new series coming up called Engineering of StarCraft, which is they just recorded the Battle Cruiser episode today. So they're talking about engineering. Yeah, it's going to be really awesome. It's run by a guy who's like an electrical engineer or something like that. So we've got a lot of exciting content. In fact, with Boisterous here, the guy with the cool voice, we actually we've done one. We're going to do more where we take a high-level Zerg that works with us, and we cast it, but more of a documentary style. We throw in some metagame stuff too. We talk about, okay, what's going on in the hive at this point in the game? What's going on, with the queens and stuff like that. So
very good.
Yep.
And for you guys listening as well, I'll be, as much as I'm on the show, I'll be streaming it, which is usually about once a week anyways, so you can just kind of, it's usually around Thursday or Friday. Maybe at some point we'll get to a point where we're tweeting it and stuff like that, but
Well, we do tweet it on our Twitter account, so you can.
There you go.
You guys can just sign up for that, and I don't know how Twitter works, but that's why I have Fonzie. I know I'm like unless you're dead and you've got a long Latin name of like 200 syllables that nobody understands, I probably won't be able to. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. It's been a pleasure. I gotta go though.
Thanks for being on the
It's been
show.
awesome.
Okay.
See you, bud.
This will be for 200 likes. Besides that, I really don't know what else I can do. But if you have suggestions, let me know. And, well, if it's shit, I'm sorry, I'm not the best. I only do it to, like, please you guys because I'm awesome, and that's just how it is. That's it. Well, thanks, and keep going. Woo!